This video will be on solving absolute value equations. I have three keys here. Get the absolute value by itself first before you do anything, and then you create two equations by setting the expression inside the absolute value equal to the positive and negative outcome. Okay, and then absolute value cannot be negative. You always got to keep that in the back of your head. So if you ever come across this, the absolute value equals a negative, that's impossible. So here you go. So I'm not going to do every single problem that's shown here, but for example, you can just think about this one. Obviously x equals 9 works. 9 is equal to 9, and also absolute value of negative 9 is also 9. Now this one here, it has a negative sign in front of it. It's basically like a -1. So to get rid of that, I divide both sides by -1, and now I can evaluate the absolute value of v equals -10. Now if you think about this, try to plug in -100. The absolute value of -100 is +100, which is not going to equal, well, I guess I was thinking inequalities, but if you try -10, absolute value of -10 is +10. If you try regular 10, absolute value of 10 is 10. So this is impossible. So we just use that symbol to, it's the undefined or empty set, basically saying there are no v's that would work. Okay, absolute value of x over 9 divided by, or absolute value of x over 9 equals 3. So the absolute value is not by itself yet. I have to get rid of the 9 by the opposite of division is multiplication, so that's going to cancel out. And now I have x, absolute value of x equals 27. And again, there's two numbers that work here. X equals +27 and x equals -27. Okay, number 5. Again, I want to get the r, the absolute value, all by itself. So you're solving this basically like solving a two-step equation. You're going to get rid of the 2. So you're going to subtract 2 from both sides. And then this is 4 times the absolute value, so you're going to divide. So you get r, absolute value of r equals 4. Then think about this. There's two numbers that work there, 4 and -4. Okay, this one x, very similar. Alright, this one here. So this is the first one that has more than just one single variable inside the absolute value. So when you have this one like this, you have to really follow what I had laid out there. Okay, you have to think about it a little bit more. I have to make two equations by setting the expression inside the absolute value equal to a positive and negative outcome. So think about what two numbers work in here. 12, the absolute value of 12 is 12, and the absolute value of -12 is also 12. Okay, so I really know the two numbers that have to become in here. It's 12 and -12. But how do I make this inside here 12? Well, you can just think about this one. It's easy enough. -6 times -2 gives you 12, and then the absolute value of 12 is 12. But you can also let algebra do the work and set it equal to, -6k equal to 12, and -6k equal to -12. Divide both sides by -6, and k equals -2. That's one of your answers. So when you plug that in, that would make that 12. The absolute value of 12 is 12. You could also divide by -6 and get 2. 2 would make -12, and the absolute value of -12 is 12. So you notice what I did is I took the expression and set it equal to 12, and I also set it to -12. Alright, number 8. Absolute values cannot equal a negative. So this is impossible. Okay, number 9, this one goes pretty quick. You just divide by 5. So I have 8p. The absolute value of 8p equals 120 divided by 5 is 24. Okay, so think about this. 8 times 3 gives you 24. So that would work. But 8 times negative 3 gives you negative 24. And the absolute value of negative 24 is also 24. So if you can't just see that, then you're going to have to take 8p, set it equal to 24, and take 8p and set it to negative 24. Divide by 8, that'll give you the 3 that I was talking about, and you divide this one by 8, that'll give you the negative 3. So those two answers both work in this situation. You could plug it back in to see if you're right. Okay, number 11, not that it's overly difficult, but it looks kind of long. I have to get rid of the negative 10 and the 8 before I split this up into two equations. So I'm going to add 10. Feels like just like I'm solving a two-step equation, really. So I have 8. Absolute value of x minus 2 equals negative 48. And something's happening here. You know, I might be able to see it before I do all this work, but I have an absolute value that's going to be equal to a negative. And that's why I had you write that down at the beginning. All right, that absolute values cannot be negative. So I have an absolute value that's saying it's going to equal something negative. That's impossible. So you may have seen that back here that, you know, adding 10 and dividing by 8 to this negative 58 was not going to make it positive. So you might have seen that earlier than, you know, at the end. Another one. This one here, some students want to say that they can put the 6 and the 2 together. You know, it's kind of tempting, but the 2 is being multiplied to this in here, so you know, you can't do that. So I would subtract 6. Oops. And you get 18, and then I gotta divide by 2. And I get v plus 1 equals 9. So you can probably guess what one of the answers is. 8 plus 1 gives you 9. Alright, so, you know, to get that, I could set that up and solve it. It's pretty simple. Or I could do v plus 1 equals negative 9. Okay, because think about this. If this ends up being negative 9 in here, the absolute value of negative 9 is also 9. So I'm going to set that equal. If I subtract 1 from both sides, I get v equals negative 10. Negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. Absolute value of negative 9 is 9. So obviously this one's just 8. So I have two answers that make this work. Alright, last one. Just looking at this one, you might say, well, the absolute value is set equal to a negative. But in this case, I have to divide by negative 5. I got to get that absolute value by itself first, and that makes 8. So now it's a different story. Now I have an absolute value that's equal to a positive number, which is very possible. So, you know, I always encourage you guys to just look for an answer. 2 times 1 gives you 2. 2 plus 6 is 8. So I already know one of my answers is 6, or is 1. But if you didn't see that, you could always just set up the equation and solve it. Now you also have to set this expression equal to negative 8, because absolute value of negative 8 also equals 8. So kind of gave away the answer here, but you get 2x equals 2, so x equals 1. This one here, I have to subtract 6. I get negative 14, divide by 2, and x equals negative 7. So why does this work? Alright, well, if I plug in negative 7, I get 2 times negative 7 plus 6. So that is negative 14 plus 6 is negative 8. Well, the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. So you can always plug your answer back in and see if you're right.